Gina is a wife, a mother, a C-suite executive boss lady, and a fellow Midwesterner who has become a friend of mine now through our own cancer and the work to be seen. Gina and I met through working in the media industry and also by both having early onset colon and rectal cancers. Gina, have loved getting to know how your work and your life have blended together, focusing on the important role that our workplace plays in our fight to overcome our cancer. And so thank you for being here. It's time for us to be seen. And I would love to jump right in. Cancer.
Great.
Yes, here we are. Part of the Cancer Club, the club we never ever aspired or wished to be part of, but I'm so grateful that it's brought us together and it's brought a lot of special and important connections in life. So thank you for saying yes to coming and joining us here on Be Seen.
Absolutely. And I feel the same way. I met so many people that I know I would not have met or become close to. So cancer opens all kinds of doors you might not expect in the beginning.
What's that old saying? Like, whenever God closes a door, opens a window. Like, I think it's opened up a whole like stadium of connections and new ways of seeing life. Of course, if you choose to look at it that way.
No, it's fine. I feel like cancer sort of ushered in the person I was supposed to be. Like it opened me up to a whole new reality. And I don't know that I was expecting that at the point of diagnosis. So that was a unique surprise.
So when you talk about it opening you up to a whole new way, like the person that you were meant to be in your life, how does that show up for you now? How would you describe that? Where are you at today?
That's a good question. I think when I think of my life pre-cancer, I feel like I was a pleaser. I went by the book. I did what my teachers wanted and my parents wanted and my coaches wanted and eventually what my bosses wanted. And I think going through a cancer journey put me in a position where I could no longer do everything that I wanted to do or that people wanted me to do. I had spent so long valuing myself based on the value I could provide to others through what I did. And then suddenly that was no longer, a path. And I think it took a while for me to adjust into a place where I could value who I was and not just what I did. Um, I still hearken back to some of my early pleaser tendencies, but I think it put me squarely in a position where I felt like I was the one who got to decide whether I was living the life I should be.
As you think about that, I mean, that's such a big realization. And as you look at cancer as an inflection point to
Mm-hmm.
bring that to reality for you now as a grown adult, right? Um, I think there are certain moments in life where we are expected to explore what it is we want to be when we grow up, what it is we are doing with this thing we call life. And as the days and weeks and different jobs and careers entirely, get layered on, sometimes we can lose sight of that. As you meet where you're at right now in this point, what is that you feel you're meant to be and how you've come to realize that?
I think you're so right. You're always waiting for the light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know about you, but
Mhm.
my yearbook quote in my senior year yearbook was, you're always preparing to live, but not never living. And I think you
Wow.
think, I know, right? Like that's pretty sad for a 17-year-old to be choosing that as the quote that sort of informed her life. But I think I spent so much time in that space waiting for the point where it would be okay. I don't know, but it's not a natural thing to do. You think that at some point, I don't know, I suppose you think that you're going to retire or like in some other way your life is going to mutate and change. And then I think you're faced with this reality of, well, maybe I won't get there. Maybe I need to make sure that that's happening today. I will tell you that I could not have predicted where I am today 2 years ago. And I'm not sure I can predict where I'll be 2 years from now, from today. I have really been fascinated at how powerful it is to try to get to the feeling of, how I want to be, and maybe not necessarily the path to get there. What does it take for me to feel aligned and like I'm the best person I am, that I'm bringing out potential for individuals or for companies? That's always been sort of a red thread through my life. And I think the way that has manifested has been different for me throughout my whole career. So, what does me helping people to find their potential look like, a couple of years from now? I don't know. But today, I think it's about looking at the cancer journey specifically and saying, yes, this is awful and brutal. And there are so many things to hate about what you're going through. But if you can't change that, how can you look at it and pull some meaning from the experience? Where is the growth coming from? How do you make something, out of something awful and use it in a way to live a happier life today than maybe you did yesterday? So that's what I'm excited about doing today.
It's so beautiful. And I think, from our first meeting, Gina, your mindset and your positive energy, the momentum that you have generated in your life, and by extension, the tentacles that have come off of it, like you are making waves as a result of your cancer. And for those of us who get to join this cancer club, and I do say get deliberately, um, that we can cheers over, or we could like just pull the covers over our head and say, what the heck happened here? That moment when life changes forever, the moment of when you meet your cancer for the first time, that diagnosis, it's a lot. Can you share a little bit about what that diagnosis was like? Who was the first person you told? What were those initial, few hours or days like for you? Um, and really, I'd love for us to be able to feel like we were alongside you there, because we want people to know what to listen for, look out for, and how to detect this and have the awareness in their own lives. So what was meeting your cancer like for you?
I mean, I look back and I didn't have any of the telltale symptoms or signs. And so I think for a long time, everything that I was experiencing was being chalked up to stress. I was losing weight, maybe um, without trying to lose weight. I was a little bit more tired, but I was a mom. I was momming 4 kids between myself and my husband's children. I was working in new business until 2 o'clock in the morning. And so I really sort of, I don't know, underestimated those things. And then my boss made me go in when I told her I could only eat potato. I thought it was hilarious that I only wanted to eat potato. And she's like, yeah, that's not normal. Have you lost weight? And I went in and they figured out that I was anemic. I had never been anemic before. Okay, now it's time for a colonoscopy. But I mean, even then I was like, oh, it's probably just a bleeding ulcer, as if that was
Mm-hmm.
like no big deal. So I kind of put off the colonoscopy when I couldn't schedule it right away. They were trying to schedule me for, 6 or 8 months down the road. And it got to the point where I was sleeping whole weekends to try to recover from my work weeks. And then finally a friend pulled a string with one of her friends to get me in. And by the time I was talking with that doctor on a weekend on a Saturday, I remember laying down and feeling a mass underneath my rib. And it was like, what is this? This is not me. This is not, I knew immediately that something was wrong. And then I went into the bathroom and I could see it actually protruding. Then we hit Google and it's like, there's nothing that you're Googling that is any sort of good news
Yeah.
when you start to go down that path. And I spoke to the doctor the next day. He was a friend of my friend, and he was like, "Oh, your levels are fine. If there was something happening with your liver, your enzymes would be through the roof." And a different doctor was telling me I was fine. 2 days later, as he gave me my colonoscopy, in spite of literally feeling the mass, and I woke up from the colonoscopy with him saying, "We found something. It's slightly malignant. We want you to come in on Friday for a CT so we can stage you." And I said, I don't think you need to stage me. I know I'm stage 4. I know that whatever is happening in my liver is probably related. And that is turned out to be true. We got the call. I got the call when I was at work, the following Monday. And I remember that point of disbelief and going to, my former boss and current mentor's office, and walking in and just announcing I have cancer. And I think it's that moment where you're trying to make it real for yourself. I might have gone to her office before I even called my husband with the news. I think you're just trying to,
Yeah.
you're in your environment, you're trying to make sense of it. And it suddenly your life isn't going by the rules that you thought it should. You've eaten healthy, you've been relatively active, like you've done all the right things. And then you're facing a diagnosis without any signs. It's surreal.
Yeah, totally surreal. And did you feel like you looked different? Did you feel like you looked or felt like
I
someone that was going to be stage 4,
I mean,
colon
I thought
cancer
it was
diagnosis?
fantastic. I was like
Hmm.
losing weight. I looked great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember just a few months prior putting on clothes for spring break and being like, "Oh, I got a size down in my shorts. This is great news." And I remember one of the first meetings I had with a doctor looking for any sort of, positive news. By then we knew that 80% of my liver was covered with tumor.
Oh my
And I was
gosh, Gina.
saying, "But I'm young and healthy, and shouldn't I have better odds than we're reading online based on that?" And he said, "Well, the best thing I can tell you is that the people who show up in the best shape are tend to be the people who do the best through treatment." I think he was sort of incredulous that I was walking around. We were about to win the biggest new business pitch that my company um, had ever pursued. I was the lead of that pitch. I mean, I look back now and it's like, I was leading this baller life and looking and feeling good. But in retrospect, the signs were there. The not wanting anything but potato. I remember presenting at that pitch and getting off the stage and being like short of breath and feeling like, okay, that is odd. But a lot of those things, I think you don't see. Hindsight's 2020. You don't recognize those as indications that something is impacting your health. When again, you're playing by the rules and you're doing all the right things.
Yeah, and I think two things can be true. You can play by the rules and do all the right things to have the odds stacked in your favor, right? Back to that high school quote. And you can also still have cancer. It's an and, it's not an or. Um, it's wild to go back and relate. I was also at work when I got the confirmation that it was for sure cancer. My husband and I were together. We had the colonoscopy done, and they came out and told me they found something. And my immediate response was, "Okay, cool. Do I have to get another colonoscopy because this prep there has to be another way
There's
than
no
to
worse
go
prep,
through
right?
this prep?" Yeah, like I had the granddaddy of all preps in it, and there are better ways to prep, which we can talk about another time. But I had just come out of my weekly team meeting, and they had expedited the biopsy and called me, and I stepped out and I went back in and called an emergency meeting with my entire team to tell them the news. And they're all in tears. I'm in tears. Like, it just was so emotional. But to do that in the workplace, I'm curious now how many people share that theme that you
Mm-hmm.
share as well with me. And I don't know, have
Yeah.
you met many people that's been their reality too?
Well, I think so many of us get our diagnosis at work because it's working hours, right? When a doctor is
Mhm.
calling, you're probably waiting for results. You're probably getting, results to the office. And, although not everybody shares at work, many of us, I think, have our whole social, network there. That's where we feel most connected with people. We spend the most time, we spend more time there than we do, waking with our families in a lot of cases. So I know for me, being part of a workplace community that supported me was really important. Um, I was ready to be transparent, right away. But that was also pretty consistent with my personality. I had been transparent about my divorce. I had been transparent about infertility. And so, cancer was just one more thing for me to be transparent about. And I think not everybody feels the same way. And that's something that I've come to appreciate over time, is how deeply personal that decision is, about whether you share at work, and not just whether you share, but what you share, and with whom, and trying to constantly navigate not just that initial disclosure, but like everything that follows, all the ups and downs and the whole roller coaster. And, how many people do you really want on that journey with you, and what is their role? And then what's your responsibility to them once you do share?
Responsibility to other people once you share is a big one, right? Like then there's a follow up. There's a is
Yeah,
there a curiosity or there, I think coming from a place of concern, people in the community, but also the obligation. I knew that if my one off text messages from people checking in were becoming too overwhelming, that I needed to do an update to that community that I had invited in so
exactly,
that they knew,
exactly.
right, that that was my signal. As you look at navigating treatment, your own treatment, the mental and emotional journey, right? The chemotherapy, the surgeries, all of it, they're focused on the physical manifestation of that
Mm-hmm.
cancer. When we look at our total well being, our mental and emotional, our spiritual community connection, how we're taking care of ourselves, the financial ramifications of this, like, can you share a little bit about, what really stands out to you if you were to say, these two or three things were really helpful in navigating the invisible parts of the battle, which are the mental, emotional, and how you kept your spirit, true to yourself through it?
I a couple of things. I think that somehow, from the very point of diagnosis, I don't know whether it was my intuition or naivety. I'm not sure exactly what it was, but there was a part of me that heard the voice in my own head saying, no, that's not how this is going to be. And I met with quite a few doctors who all gave me some version of, we're going to try to keep you alive for a year or two and then hope that medical science offers something better by then. Um, and like that inner voice of, no, like I'm a mom. There's fingernails to clip, like
Mhm.
I can't, that's not how this is going to go. And so I think, um, the community and the support that I received helped me to hold on to that. I think, when things started to move downhill, it wasn't a straight path. I'm not sure that any cancer journey is a straight path.
Mhm.
And so I think having people, believe in me made it easier for me to believe in myself in those moments where maybe I didn't. I thought it was really fascinating. My husband created a community called "We Are All Made of Stars," and I said I wanted the star as a sort of a healing symbol, and I was going to imagine all these like chicken and stars soup, like the little stars that come in the
Oh, I
chicken and
love
stars
that.
soup. I
Yeah.
wanted to visualize all these little stars kind of coming into my body, and I decided early on I didn't want to fight or be a warrior or battle. Like that language didn't
Mm.
appeal to me. I wanted
Mhm.
these stars to kind of nip away at the disease, and I was going to love my cancer away. And I asked people to visualize stars, working with me. And I think what unintentionally what that gave people was an emoji language. When they didn't know what to say, they could send stars. And when I was at my lowest points, I could ask for stars. It's really hard to ask for help. It's hard to ask for support. It's relatively easy to ask for stars. And it was really amazing in my lowest moments, I think, to say I'm struggling. Will you send, I need stars. Will people send me stars? And literally my social media, my phone
Mm.
would blow up with hundreds, thousands. People would travel the world and send me pictures of stars that they saw, in all kinds of places, in mosques and churches throughout the world. And I think that sense of community kept me going when maybe I was flagging a little bit. And I was shocked how well it worked. And I don't know whether or not that was part of me leaning into the fear and acknowledging this is bad right now. I don't know
Mhm.
what to do. I am scared out of my mind. So I don't know whether it was articulating that helped me to feel better, or the flood of stars, or both. Um, but yeah, as I look back, that played a major role for me.
And how does that play a role for you today and moving forward? Like as you share that with me, I didn't know that about you since we've met each other, but I immediately like there's a luminescence in stars, and
Mm-hmm.
you are such a bright light with a voice and a power to influence for good in so many ways. And the way that you've used your cancer and your ability to intertwine that with the workplace and the lives that you touch, it's so bright and shining. And I'm like, of course it's stars, of course
Of
it's a
course,
flood
it
of
would be
stars for
stars.
Gina. Yeah, it just that makes total sense to me. And it's not just good vibes, it's the flood of stars. And it's so vivid and something so simple to let people know they're thinking of you in these moments wherever they are. And whether it's cancer or not, sometimes we just want to be know that we're thought of, know that people care, know that we matter to other people in their lives.
Well, and I go back to that. It's hard to ask for help. It's hard to be vulnerable. What I saw again and again is every time I asked for stars, at least one person would reach out to me who really needed me in that moment, maybe more than I
Mm.
needed them. I became much more cognizant of the value that asking for help had for other people. So it helped me, but I was shocked how that opened up deeper connections with people in my network that maybe I wasn't as close with. But every single time, I remember posting one time at 2 o'clock in the morning and thinking, well, who's going to be up now? But I don't know. I can't sleep. What else am I going to do? And I posted on Facebook, I'm struggling. I need stars. And somebody texted me and she said, I think, texted me with stars and then
Mhm.
said, I'm so glad you're up because I think I'm about ready. I think I'm about to receive a breast cancer diagnosis and I don't know what to do. And so I think in opening yourself up to receive support, you allow other people to do the same. That vulnerability allows connection that wouldn't otherwise happen. Today, one of the things I say again and again is support changes outcomes, and being able to ask for it and being open to receive it has changed my life again and again.
Well, and you talk about people really struggling with accepting help from others. I'm one of those people. I think it's a massive honor anytime someone calls and asks for that help, or just as a friend.
Mm-hmm.
There are friends that I have that go back tens of years that will have distance and space, not have connected. And there'll be a moment of struggle where they're like, I need to call Marissa. It's like the
Yep.
greatest honor of my life. And when we invite people in to help us, especially in these times where we have Herculean moments in our life that we have to overcome, by accepting that help, not only does the person need it, but it gives someone else a purpose in that journey where so often our community that cares about us feels helpless. And helplessness is tough to navigate, maybe tougher than the cancer itself. As you look at the things that people leaned in to help you, what were some of the things, maybe even the tiny, simple things that they may not realize they did? Obviously, we've got the flood of stars
Yeah.
and being there and showing up. What were some of those things where you feel like people really showed up to help you and you found that sense of community?
The thing that I feel most grateful for looking back are people who took my kids to do fun things.
Mm-hmm.
The twins were 7 when I was diagnosed. The older kids were, in middle school and just starting high school. But I think particularly for the twins, they were still at the age where they needed to play. And I didn't have the energy to play. I think one of the mistakes I made was probably working too hard through my diagnosis. But, for the people who showed up and wanted to take the twins to a trampoline park for a couple of hours, I had so much guilt, I think, as a mother, that I was sort of falling down on some of those aspects of what should have been, parts of their childhood. My husband, he's the guy who is the playful one in our relationship, and he was trying to take care of me. There were just too many people, and so I look back on that, and people did that. We had a meal train.
Mm-hmm.
I think early on I was like, no, I really like to cook. We like to cook. You forget how much like logistical stuff goes along with it. I was not prepared for how often I felt sick or for how long. And so some of those, like addressing the purely logistical stuff, was huge. If you're trying to weigh the difference between a gift card for a dinner and a blanket, I'd go with the gift card. Like it's those kinds of things that made a difference.
So for me on the meal train, we were so grateful to have a meal train helping us as well. And when other people come down with a cancer diagnosis, I'm sure you get a lot of these calls as well of what can I do to help this
Yeah.
person? How can I help? I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, take the simple decisions that they have to make in their lives off the table. And
Yep.
that is, what are we going to eat for dinner? Or what do we feel like tonight? Or, how can we have that time to come together? For us as a family, eating dinner as a family is a daily ritual that we preserve, even with our careers and travel baseball and small children and the ins and outs. Like, coming together at the table to eat is tremendously important to us. And it became so hard to do that because we were having to make so many bigger decisions about treatment paths and plans and impact of fertility and when, how, and where would all of this treatment take place. So my advice was, don't send me a gift card, just decide. Just have the food show up on my doorstep, because I don't want to make one more decision along the way. And it's, again, that's why you got to ask the person. For you, gift cards are better than blankets. I got plenty of blankets and I still treasure them today. It makes me think of those kind
I
people
don't
that
want.
like
I
wish
shouldn't. I
they,
shouldn't be. I shouldn't be poo pooing on
you're not.
blankets, but
No, but like, look, for you, the blankets are great. So were the gift cards. It's an
yeah,
and, not an or.
yeah,
And in our time, both were tremendously important to us too. We're so grateful for the gift cards and the thoughtfulness that people shared. As we're looking at the purpose that help along the way is looking to serve, it can show up in so many different ways for people. And being able to say, this is what I need, this is how you can help me, it's actually a sign of strength and confidence and that connection for people who are just yearning to lift some of that weighty burden that you are carrying as you're facing and overcoming your cancer.
I also feel like there were a couple of people who did a great job of articulating something specific that they thought they could do. I had one woman who said, I'm at Target twice a week. When you need something from Target, text me because I'm probably going there anyway. And it was like that specific. Somebody else saying, I will take the twins to their, Sunday school every week. So I think particularly in cases like that it like took the decision off of my shoulders. I didn't have to decide what I wanted Katie to do. I knew that she was going to go to Target, and I didn't always text her. But I think particularly if my husband wasn't around and I was craving something specific, I would reach out and say, hey, I need the white bread and marmalade. Or, it's like you want weird things. I actually wanted like Jollibee mashed potatoes. Potato is a theme for me,
Seems.
apparently. I don't know.
That's so funny. Hey, whatever makes us feel that comfort and calm, so important.
Yeah.
So, as you look at navigating the difficult times, as you look at your cancer journey holistically, there are different moments that will shine as that Polaroid or snapshot that can instantly take you back to that moment. And sometimes we forget the brain has that way of healing where it just it it helps eliminate some of those tough moments from our photo album.
Mm-hmm.
One other way that we are able to get through things, to be lifted up, and to flash back to moments that are tough and or that we're grateful for is through music. And I'm curious, if you look back at your cancer journey, is there a particular song or music or voice that you would say, this is the song, this is the artist that kind of encapsulated that moment in life for you?
I'm going to reveal myself as a child of the growing up in the 80s. I feel like a lot of my songs are rooted there. I remember when I was first diagnosed, the song was the Pet Shop Boys. What have I done to deserve this? Do you remember that song? You
Okay.
might be
Yep.
too young, but this, what have I done to deserve this? And,
Okay.
but the song that really powered me through everything was the song that has been my good luck song since 8th grade, when I was Gina dating Tommy, my first boyfriend. Gina and Tommy. And Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi was the number one song. And I don't know if are tied into the lyrics, but that is a song about how Gina and Tommy make it against the odds. And I remember, like, even back then being like, oh, this song is a sign. At the time, I thought it was a sign that Tommy and I would be together forever, which didn't end up being true. But throughout my journey, it became sort of a good luck song. I would find myself worried about what would happen, and would I ever recover from this or that. I recurred multiple times throughout my journey, and I think when I was lowest, it felt like that song would always come on. It was uncanny, and it felt like a signal to me, like, okay, you're still going through it, but you're ultimately going to get to the end of this.
And that was what you played out in your mind when you would hear that come on. You're on this journey, but you're going to get through. You're halfway there. Keep going.
I'm halfway there. I'm going to keep going. I remember from the very beginning being like, I just don't think this is going to take me down. And I know what the odds say, and I know what my doctors think. I interviewed 4 different doctors before I found one who seemed like maybe she believed in me the way I believed in myself. But I'm like, I don't know. I don't know whether, I still am not sure, but I hold on to that. And I leave room. It goes back to the both things can be true. I can intuitively feel like I am going to get through this. And I can be afraid that I may not. My last scans weren't perfect. They wanted me back in 8 weeks instead of 12 weeks. That's coming up now in a little over a week. And you have to hang on to both of those things. Intuitively, I feel healthy. I feel like I'm still in a good place. And I could be wrong. I could be wrong. And I don't need to, I feel like so much of scanxiety is a function of your ego stirring up noise, so that if you turn out to be wrong, if something really does end up being on that scan, that you can look back and go, oh, I knew it. I was anxious about this. And it's like, I could be wrong, but I'm not going to create havoc for myself, so that there's this illusion that maybe you'll feel better if you can look back and go, oh, I knew it. And it's like, no, that's not really true. You feel pretty bad about a recurrence no matter what. So yeah, I don't know. Today I find myself trying to hang on to that thing, the idea of, no, this is, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to make of this what I'm supposed to make of this. And also, the path of that journey may be what I don't want or expect at this moment. And both of those things can be true.
I think there's so many paradoxes that we face through this. And I feel like we could have a whole additional conversation about navigating the unknown, the scanxiety, the big life questions that we ask ourselves through this. I appreciate you bringing it up and sharing where you're at in this very moment, because there is never completion to life or a moment once you have cancer. And there is always, for all of us, that chance it could come back. And for the moment that we're in and where we're living today, like every human being, there are curveballs that can come our way that greatly change the path and the time that we have and treasure together. As we look at that, I so appreciate your just vulnerability and transparency and showing up authentically in this conversation today. And I know that's Gina. You do that in so many settings. I'm wondering if you'd share a little bit with us as we're wrapping up our time, about the role that the workplace plays. If you can share a little bit about working with cancer and the other initiatives that from facing and meeting your own cancer have been born out of this, and the role that you've played in them. I would love for our audience and everyone to know a bit more about that, if you're willing to share.
Absolutely. I mean, the Working with Cancer initiative was really born out of our CEO's cancer experience. And when he was transparent about, his diagnosis, the number of people who reached out to him and said, thank you for sharing. When I was going through this, when my partner was going through this, my child was going through this, I didn't feel like I could be transparent. I thought that I needed to hide it. I was worried about people treating me differently, or impacting my career long term. And he said, that, I can't imagine going through all of this, all the physical demands of cancer treatment, and then also trying to pretend that everything was okay. And how do we create a movement to help companies make sure that their employees know that they'll have their backs if something happens, that they won't have to worry about losing their job, that they will be supported throughout and thereafter, and that they won't be, frankly, fall victim to what might be positive intention, but actually really negative situations, like being passed over for roles or jobs, in the future, out of concern that, they might not be able to hack it physically or emotionally. And so, we started that. It launched in early 2023, where we challenged companies to take a pledge and take a look at their own policies and determine, what could they sign up for? What could they articulate to help their employees feel better knowing that they would be there? There's a huge gap that exists at the beginning. More than half of people are afraid about what a cancer diagnosis will mean for them from a work perspective. The number 2 question after will I live is, can I work? And a lot of that is driven by people who want to work. So, more than half of people have that fear of like, what is going to happen to me at work? The good news is over 90% of people have a really positive experience and feel that workplace support is part of, had a powerful positive impact on their health. And so what we talk about is companies really articulating what they will do to support somebody to help to close that gap, so that from the very moment of diagnosis or the moment of sharing internally, that your company has your back. And so we help companies to kind of create programming and policies that really bear that out, so that people have positive experiences, that they talk about positive experiences, and ultimately that fear of what is going to happen, at least we can take that away. We can't take away all the cancer fear, but work-related fear and insecurity is within our power, and workplaces have, a real role that they can play. And I think personally, my add to that is when we support people, when we can help them to lean into their fear, understand what they've gone through. There's post-traumatic growth that can come from an experience like this. A cancer journey isn't unlike a marathon. A marathon is grueling and physically demanding. And yet, at the end of that marathon, you look at that person who's run the marathon and gone, wow, I can't believe so-and-so did that. And so how do you start to create the same type of experience with cancer, life's most valuable, non-elective, life course? And so I truly believe that with the right support, people can look at this experience and say, hey, this allows me to show up differently as a person, yes, as a mother, but also as a professional, and what I bring to the workforce and the way that I show up and, live out my purpose in a way that hopefully helps, my team members find the best of themselves professionally as well. So I'm a big believer that if we support people through the journey the right way, we will have stronger professionals on the other side of it who are contributing in a whole new way. And I don't know, I feel like I'm exhibit A in that. I used to pitch new business for a living, and now I pitch companies to make these types of commitments for their employees. And every week I hear from somebody about an experience that they had that was positively impacted by the way their company received them when they were at the worst moment of their life. So I'm really excited to see what else can happen in this space. But it's been really encouraging, I think, to see employers recognize that they have a role to play and that their support may change, someone's outcome.
And it was so surprising to me to learn through this that some people, not only do they not communicate about their diagnosis with their children, young and adult children, that especially in the workplace, that there are adults who mask their diagnosis as a child having cancer or someone else in their life having cancer because the scheduling of it is so intense. But when we're doing that and people are choosing to hide that from their employer, the place where we spend more time during our days and weeks than we do in other settings, our bodies aren't entirely focused on the healing and recovery that needs to come from it.
Right.
And so if employers can take that out of the equation, whether it's the false stories or the facade that people are putting on, and they can focus entirely on their healing and showing up at work to do their best, and that they can keep life as normal and as passion filled as possible as they're navigating this biggest challenge that likely they've yet to see in their lives. It's such an important part of that healing journey. And so for your work leading this, for the CEO of Publicis Group and all of the investment that Publicis has put into supporting working with cancer, what's one thing that people can do today, whether they're inside of an organization or in a role that's influential? What can they do today to help encourage their workplace to perhaps change the way they approach cancer and the medical support and job security that they can give to people throughout their treatment.
I think that one of the most powerful things we've seen companies do is communicate um, job, salary, and benefit security for people who are impacted. And the reason it's powerful is it eliminates one of those initial fears, I think, especially companies in the US where your healthcare is tied to employment, saying, hey, if you're diagnosed, you don't have to worry. We're going to protect your job, your salary, your benefits. You don't have to worry about this for a year. It's a really powerful promise at the beginning that almost operates as a reason to believe everything else. It's a huge commitment, and I think people recognize and feel it that way. So when I take a look at what companies are doing, I think that's probably one of the most powerful tactics. Um, I think the other thing that has been fascinating is how light a lift can have value on the other end of the equation. So guaranteeing job benefit, salary security is a big commitment. Financially, logistically, it's challenging to work through that. On the other end of the spectrum is the simple things, manager training, navigating conversations, helping people to more confidently provide the help and the support that they want to provide. There is so much positive intention here. And yet, I think because people don't want to harm, they don't want to say the wrong thing, they may say nothing, or they say the wrong thing with positive intentions. We hear all kinds of stories about people who have heard some version of, I don't want you to worry about work, leave, go away, get yourself healed, and I don't want you back here until you're well. And I think the intention behind that can be very positive, but it can be incredibly painful for somebody whose identity and connections all exist in the workplace, to essentially hear on their end, you're not valuable to me when you're not well and you're not contributing 100%. So go away, and we'll see you when you're whole again. And so even just an hour spent with a capable trainer or facilitator to kind of walk through some of the do's and don'ts, I think can have a huge, huge impact on an organization and the way they show up for a person. And it's one of those trainings that people are generally enthusiastic about attending, because people do want to be able to navigate that space, not only with their colleagues and coworkers, but anybody in their life who's impacted.
That's right. And when our workplaces are able to help expose us to navigating those ambiguous and complex types of conversations in our lives, when we want to show up in the best way and most supportive way possible, the unintended consequences of that can be both positive and negative. And so
Right.
those are the types of learning and development opportunities that, I'm glad to hear you see people running toward that. And I'm asked all the time when people get that diagnosis, both from a workplace standpoint, but also from an individual, whether it's your sibling or your best friend or whoever it might be, what can we do to help? And I had that same conversation, the call to our CEO upon my diagnosis. He said, don't take a couple weeks, don't just focus on what you need to navigate that's new and different. And my immediate response of, I'm not ready to drop this mic right now. No
Right.
way. I'm
Right.
like, I will tell you when I need to, but I need this. For me, my identity isn't tied up in it, but my purpose and my zeal for life,
Yep.
it absolutely was. And I didn't want to just become a patient navigating scans and chemicals going into my body and counts and blood being drawn out of my body. It's a lot.
It's a double loss. You've lost
Mhm.
control of your physical self, and then you potentially lose, right? To your
Yes,
point, whether it's purpose or identity or some combination. So, but again, people have positive intention when they say
they
that.
do. They totally do. And they're
They,
trying to be
oh, you shouldn't
supportive.
have to worry about work, but it can be painfully received. And I think the good news is once you have those conversations, you build an empathy muscle that applies for any kind of difficult situation that anybody is going through. So it's a lesson that I think can be much more far reaching than somebody who's impacted by cancer or serious chronic illness. We're all going to go through something difficult in life sooner or later. And so it gives us a little bit of a script or a playbook to apply in any of those situations.
That's exactly right. Well, we are at the end of our conversation. So I have my very last question for you, Gina, which is, what does it mean to you to be seen?
That is a deep question. And immediately I want to go to a place where I am seen not just for what I do, but what I am meant for. I would love to be seen as somebody who helped you, whoever the you is, realize their potential and have the confidence to pursue it. I feel like that is who I am at my heart, and it feels more crucial than ever. That I encourage people to take the time and embrace it, and hopefully not have to go through an experience like this to get there. So that is who that's who I hope I'm seen as when I'm seen by someone else, someone who can help you to become who you want to be.
Well, I see you doing that often. And in our conversations, the exponential impact that you are having on helping people realize their potential, I see it showing up. And it may not come back amplified to you directly in those individual instances, but it's had that impact on me personally. And I'm so grateful for you doing the work that you're doing, for Cancer Connecting Us, and for the way that you are shaping the way people embrace their challenges in life, and the way that workplaces meet them where they're at and help give them that choice to go forward with confidence. So thank you so much for joining me today, for your friendship.
Thank you so much for having me and guiding us through such a great conversation.
No, this was great. So, all right. Well, we'll talk again soon. Thanks for joining.
Bye-bye.